Welcome to the March 12th OpenZFS production user call. We have Andrew, Rob, Stu, Richard, Jan, and myself, Michael, so far. And a question came up before the recording, which was, why are there 3 ZFS-related channels on LibreChat? Any and all love in that department is appreciated. OpenZFS social media has not been, and community media and engagement has not been a super high priority. But watch this space, and we're open to ideas, advice, volunteers, you name it. I'm sorry about the time change. The Pacific Coast has a time change despite several states voting to say, hey, let's ditch that. And I believe there's a 4-week overlap with Europe before many countries changed there. And well, if you show up an hour late, I'm very sorry. If you show up an hour early, I'm also sorry, but we do what we can. Now, thank you to everyone who's helped with the production user feature incubation. That is a at this point, multi-decade kind of hybrid of, okay, what does it look like to reward developers for community work that's often in the context of commercial work and other volunteering and this whole amorphous blur. But in recent weeks, I and others have concluded that helping developers incubate larger projects, because sometimes that research results in 90% of the work discussed, and sometimes it concludes that that's a really bad idea and we shouldn't go any further. My week was made last week when someone came through with, $500, and that's been dispersed in various ways. Not all of it, some of it, to various developers to do some investigative work. One of them is Rob, who is investigating libzfs, and the recent calls and discussions on that have been excellent. This document is, I believe, linked from, it's linked from the main page. I'll drop it in chat for those who care. But what's beautiful here is that a little bit of money goes a very long way when it comes to having a developer just drop everything, take a peek, and learn stuff. We all have an intuitive sense of what might be needed somewhere at some point, but having just someone set aside time is invaluable. Hit me with any questions on that as they come up, but thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, the first planning meeting for the 2020, let me make that a 5 OpenZFS user and production and developer summit has begun happening, and gee, that was today at 10. And Matt, Karen, and I met, and we will largely rinse and repeat what we did last year. It was a blast. Thank you, most of the people attending for attending that event, most of the people attending this call, to be more specific. And it will take place as per tradition in late October. It will not fall on Halloween, and we are waiting to just confirm that date with some key developers. And one thing that came out of the planning is that, like the above topic on IRC, we need some additional warm body to help with remote participation moderation. Patrick and I did our best to watch various channels, be it YouTube live feedback, be it Slack, be it direct messages, be it you name it. And we just don't have the mental bandwidth to do justice to that. So you out there, think about if that's a role you might want to play. We might be able to even compensate for that. So there's plenty of time, yet we just want to get that right because it's a very nice benefit to participants. And we're even thinking of having a remote participation ticket that would include a t-shirt sent to anywhere in the world. Various shirts were sent to various people after the conference, particularly to remote presenters. Thank you all who participated. Who am I not thanking? Yeah, well, I'm grateful. Any questions?
As far as that goes, keeping an eye on IRC, Discord, maybe even that YouTube-y thing is something that I can probably do.
Cool. Let's have that conversation. Thank you, Andrew. You did attend, so you actually know what the space looked like. You know what's involved, and but let's call you a candidate. Great, thank you. Yes, Jan.
Even just having the event website tell you which official communication channels exist. Like, this is the platform to get your questions in. Like, even it doesn't matter if it's IRC or the YouTube live chat or whatever. Don't spread yourself too thin by trying to monitor every Mastodon server around there for the questions in their local timeline or something ridiculous like that.
Yep.
Just give one or two platforms where you can ask questions,
That
and
is a
everything
very
beyond
good
that
point.
is out of scope, because otherwise you're going to miss something on the more important platforms, chasing the unimportant ones, and people will just feel lost. And especially something when if it's IRC, like start your question you would like to ask the room with bracket, cube, bracket, or whatever. And then you can set a proper chat client to highlight those questions so it's easier to notice them. And it helps to reassure people your question has been seen. Just
Good
you haven't
point.
been overlooked, don't ask again.
Cool.
Don't feel nervous or something. It's just right now is not the time for forwarding your questions, but it's on whoever is responsible's little list. Just put that in an editor. If the question gets answered, maybe right back has been answered. If you have the mental bandwidth to keep up with that, that's the
Cool.
little I dot. Crossing your dotting your eyes, crossing your teeth. It's really asking a bit too much, but it would be very nice as someone who probably has to go remote in.
Okay. Well, careful there. You might be volunteering to help organize that aspect of it insofar as the do's and the don'ts, because I didn't even know we had a whole bunch of YouTube live questions coming in until Patrick
Oh,
pointed that out.
Patrick kind of tried to monitor too many channels, like IRC channels, live chat here, Zoom chat, and
Yep.
so on, because
Yep.
the way to remote participate was also, yeah. Some things just don't scale, others have high latency. For example, YouTube is bad because the supposed live stream is like 30 to 60 seconds behind
Oh,
the real
interesting.
room.
Oh, I
Oh
didn't
And
even
yeah,
know
it
that.
is.
Oh, hey,
and
sweet.
that
Okay.
means that YouTube really sucks for getting a question, and especially during something like the official time for question, because when you're consuming the stream via YouTube, it's by the time you put it in, there's
Right.
probably at least one more question being answered. So you cannot have follow-ups, even if the time would otherwise allow for it.
Okay, let's circle back to that insofar as we've got Rob, and I want to just throw
Get
out.
Patrick in. He did a good job.
He did. Oh, he
He's
did great. We came up with some new strategies, you name it. Um,
at the end it worked. Tell him to just quick
Clone
cover the
himself.
backup he made.
Yes.
Or something like that.
Uh,
And
yeah.
people running the audio video gear often have a, compared to an event with travel costs, reasonable wish list of audio or video equipment which would help them. I know Patrick has a bunch of gear, but now that he knows the event location, maybe there's something which would reduce his workload.
Correct. And my entire AV fundraising project was the core of that. So check that out on its own. I want to just punch through these and then let's hear from Rob. On a recent call in celebrating the success of Flow, I mentioned that there were some various articles about, oh, gee, Blender's not ready for prime time, why it's not being used in big industry. And there's one often linked article that's on LinkedIn, and it's not, maybe it was deleted, maybe because of recent events. And then this was one of them. It's kind of cute. And then there's
I
the Blender versus the video effects industry, which is
I
it's kind of
just saw
informative and
one.
supportive. Go
I
ahead.
just saw one this morning.
Ooh,
I
do
don't have
tell.
a link for it though. That is the opposite. How
Hmm.
Blender beat or beat Industrial Light and Magic or something
Nice.
like that. It was
Okay.
something to that
Oh, dude.
effect.
Yes, if you can find that, do share it. Uh,
I'll take a look.
Thank you. Thank you. But it's just the moment I first saw that headline, Blunder's not ready. I just like, yeah, sure. Okay. You've been disproven. Cool. Anyway, so that's close to my heart. Um, Rob, any questions to our user of the hour who is using libzfs, which is Jan. Thank you again so much for your recent conversations there, where I think we've made some good progress, genuine progress. But the floor is yours if you want it, Mr. Muted.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I'm
Hello.
not, I think I'm muted now.
You're set.
I don't have a lot to add this week. Kind of.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I thank you for the little bit of sponsor money. That is a good motivator. I used it to yes, spend some time having drop everything and look around. Spend a little bit of time thinking about just what to do about this thing in general, and I wrote a blog post,
Oh,
which is that.
sweet.
Um, uh, which is it's fairly new. It's only posted last night, and that's sort of trying to come at it. It's very meandering because that's kind of my style, but
And we love you
it's
for it.
it's kind of vaguely coming at it from the perspective of someone turning up at OpenZFS looking for, their shell, what they can, where they can get to with the CLI tools sort of run out of steam a little bit, and they come looking for other options, and the various ways in which they are disappointed. So, but
All right.
the the conclusion I'm kind of reaching, it's actually interesting. About halfway down, there's some links out to short Matt Aaron's presentation from 2012 about libzfs core and like why libzfs is horrible, and mostly because it was never intended as a general purpose anything. It was there as a utility library to support the zpool and ZFS tools. And even at Sun, they were saying internally, to other teams, don't use this, don't use this.
Ah,
And
okay.
people kept using it, and that made it harder and harder to effect changes there. So libzfs core was kind of we are going to solve it by making a new thing, and of course they did. And then yeah, in that time, I sort of argue in that post that I think it is designed wrong. Um, not not that it was wrong, but I think the needs are it draws the lines a little bit wrong. I think based on conversations we've had, like by exposing NV lists so heavily, and by trying to one-to-one match the kernel interface, which means that anyone wanting to use it has to do a whole lot of work
Right.
in their application, which is these days not really what people are here for, because you're not here to generally, you're not going to be here to write a big storage program. You're going to be here to, integrate your storage layer into your application, into your automation, into your whatever. And you kind of, not that you want to half-ass it, but you kind of want to get in and get out, not think too much about it. So I sort
Hmm.
of, that's the kind of thread I draw through it. So at the end, I sort of start imagining, well, what might an API look like that does meet, does work how people might expect it? And I basically say it's it's roughly the same shape as the tools that people already know. Like why can you type ZFS snapshot foo to create a snapshot, but it takes half a dozen lines of code to do the same thing? That kind of sucks. But then also says, um, maybe a low-level C library of simple C that can then be bound easily to other languages is the way to go, because if we go writing it from the start in some other language, well, then everyone's got to redo everything for every language, and then that, is sort of a problem of a number of people. So there's a bunch of stuff in there that's
Brilliant.
kind of my own thinking on it. And then at the very end, it just reiterates, but our starting point is libzfs core is there, and it's very close to being something, through Young's work, just figuring out what the minimal set of headers and stuff is. It's very close to being something that we can use to experiment with and at least feel out the space. So that's what I'll be continuing on, just trying to make sure that is able to be used easily, and
Brilliant.
maybe add some documentation to the header, so we can at least have something written down that says, well, here's how you might use this, and maybe 2 or 3 sample programs just to do simple things, to
Oh,
mimic like a ZFS
absolutely.
list, or to create create a clone out of a snapshot, or look up a snapshot and clone it, or something like that. Just some simple programs that are there, well commented, that are there to show how to use things. And then from there, get that traffic idiots.
Yeah, no worries.
and and then if that's enough to sort of get people at least able to play on it, we can start iterating from there. Well, what's working, what's not. What would your application like to do? And I'm keeping Samba in the back of my head, as I know we have I know we have an updated version, and we have some newer information from like IX systems and that sort of thing. But I'm keeping that in the back of my head as
Sure.
this is a ready-made application that has specific things that it would like to be able to do with ZFS. Even if it already can, even if that code exists, what would have been nice the first time they turned up? What would have been nice for them to see? Because that's, in the absence of anything sort of general purpose, that's possibly not a bad thought experiment. So that's about what I got.
Fantastic. I'm torn. I love this blog post, but I'm like, why did you put time into that? But we have to define the problem. So it's actually probably, I wish this conversation took place a decade ago, but still, it's brilliant. Thank you. Brilliant. Great work. And if we're going to nerd out briefly, Jan, you pointed out that you found a use for libnv
No,
NV lists are used. What's going
there's
on?
a situation where you have to potentially use a large subset of the libnv pair API to effectively use this feature through libzfs core. It's only implemented there, but even libzfs doesn't do that, and that is invoking channel programs, because the return value and the argument given to the channel program is potentially very deeply nested NV list. I think the recursion depth limit is like 20 deep. So it's not like you can pretend that this is a list of lists or something. No, this is in like up to 20 levels deep before even just the output code refuses to deal with the data. Level of tree nesting. So yeah, and let's say you want, for example, replicate the dataset tree structure in a pool, and then have that tree, and on each tree you not just have one node children, and then another node for all the properties you've extracted or something. And so there's a good use where you actually have to have a recursive tree return value. And to walk that, you need a good subset of libnv pair.
Interesting.
If you actually do that and not flatten it into a list of data sets with a name, and then, but if you actually keep the tree structure, and you can do either in your channel program, then yeah, then you have to also enumerate a tree recursively. But one of the issues I found with calling into libzfs is that, and that's not completely fair to blame them given that it's an internal API, but even for someone getting into OpenZFS development, it would be useful to know the valid lifetimes of each of the different data set, each of the different data structures returned and so on. So if I have an iterator over the data sets in the pool or something like that, do I invalidate that? Can I still get something out of it after I've moved it to the next value? Is there like one ZFS underscore T pointer for just the current state, or can I kind of save array the ZFS underscore T's in some collection of my own and basically iterate over them and collect the pointers? Or is it updating it in place or freeing the old one and allocating a new one? It's not documented. You actually have to read the implementation to find out. And having this documented would save anyone trying to use this library, even as part of improving something like the ZFS command output. Yeah, it would help to know such things and not have to chase down the implementation and know that you've only found out what is currently the behavior, but you have no idea if this is going to remain that way, if this is intentional or not, if this would even be considered an API change or just, don't rely on it. Start a new iterator and iterate to the value you want every time, or extract the name and open the data set yourself. Again, something like that.
Rob, making sense?
Yep, on board with all of it.
Awesome. And while I have all of you, can we name a perfect hello world consumer that is grokkable? No, that term might be tarnished. What's
listing all
conceivable? Okay, go ahead. I'll
the
shut up.
simplest one, which may potentially be useful, is test if a data set exists or find the type of a data set given its name. It's like the hello world. The next one would be to loop, just read a property from each child data set of this one, and then recursively for all ancestors, and so on. This would be like the simplest one. The next one would be creating a data set, kind of stuff. What would also be nice is to know what happens if I open a data set and I have a handle to it in the form of the ZFS underscore T pointer, and then concurrently another process destroys the data set. I assume I will get something like error, no such entry when I use it, but right now I have to either try it and rely on the observed behavior or actually read the implementation again and find out. I really care. Because I'm very sure that it's not like a file descriptor that prevents that from like a mount point which cannot be unlinked while it's mounted. Because I'm not getting a new file descriptor to the device or something like that. Yeah. It's just you have a file descriptor and you perform ioctls on it. So of course you can have an ioctl trying to reference a data set by name, and the data set got destroyed after you have already created that kind of handle which now has gotten stale, and that is just something you need to know. It's something you should expect if you're an experienced developer. But the exact behavior are different. Also, the other thing is what I had to look up in the implementation is that the buffer and the variable for storing the error strings is part of the libzfs handle and not the pool or the data set. So, okay, I have an error message. Now I want to look up some information to provide a richer user-facing error message. Oh, damn, I've invalidated my my existing error, so I would have to have saved that array earlier. Yeah, these kinds of things would be nice to have just as comments in the header explaining about a bunch of things.
Yeah, for real. My hello world sort of examples were things that I wanted as a sysadmin, which was one was get a list of the data sets and their current direct usage, which is ZFS list -o name, refer. But that's actually quite difficult to do in libzfs in particular. Um, not impossible. Obviously, it's just a lot of setup. So that's one because I feel like ZFS list is
Uh,
surprisingly complex, but also a thing that people will want to do easily. The So there's that one. The other one, the one that I really wanted, and if it had been comfortable, I might not be here.
Right.
Because that was one of the things that first threw me into the guts of the code and led to me moving jobs, which was getting pool state and in particular individual VDEV state. So, which is actually quite hard to do well, even from the command line tools.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, zpool status has that difficult indenting that is hard to parse.
mhm.
Z zpool list dash v shows it, but does not respect the header filters and that sort of thing on those sublines. VDEV properties, you have that information now since what 2.0 or 2.1, but they also don't respect, and this is probably a bug really. They don't respect the like -O options for filtering and that sort of stuff. So you end up having to do some funky stuff to like get multiple properties out and then join lines. Or these days you can do it through the JSON output. You pipe zpool status and then pipe it into JQ and extract it that way. But there is actually no that I could find, there is no way with the standard CLI tools to get the state of leaf VDEVs, physical drives, so whether they're online, degraded, faulted, whatever, only with the ZFS tools, which is very interesting. And so, yeah, not super hard to do with it's not super hard to do through the ioctls anyway. It's awkward through libzfs. So those are the two that I would kind of like. Because if I had heard that early, that was one of the first things I looked at. And I'm like, oh, how do I get this information out? And I looked at, could I get it in channel programs? Could I grep it out? All this sort of stuff. And in the end, I wrote a thing which just grabbed all the properties for everything and dumped them into Prometheus every couple of minutes and then rebuilt my alerts out of that. Using a query there, which was overkill but nice. Anyway, so those two I like, and the other one I like as a writable thing is just creating a clone from a snapshot, because it's very easy to do because that's like a writable kind of thing. It's very easy to do from the command line, and it's a little bit fiddly to do programmatically. At least it's multiple steps.
One big caveat you have to watch out for here is that logging the history in the way the commands would log it is not part of libzfs. So you actually have to then do, what is a zpool add history?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not worried about that. I'm thinking about as like those three are my hello world examples. If I started actually saying, here is how to use the API, those are the three I'd write. Not necessarily as full featured programs, but just here's how you get started. And yes, if we need a better actual API on the history, then we can do that. But yeah, I'm not worried about what's missing so much right now. But if we write an example program and it's 50 lines to do something that's one CLI command, then it's like maybe we could make this slightly better.
The best I can do is get the heck out of the way and let you do that. That is brilliant. I couldn't be happier. Welcome, Steve. Here is the blog post that Rob brilliantly wrote up on where he's at with libzfs. And yeah, I'll leave it to you to decide when like channel programs either interact with all this discussion or are completely irrelevant to it. So brilliant. Thank you. Any questions from everyone else to Rob, possibly Jan? Did that make sense as Hello World examples?
I think that logging history should be part of the first uh, writing example. So the first time you modify the pool state in a way which would leave a history entry, you should be told that this is not part of the API. You have to do it yourself, because otherwise you're going to be surprised if you have to do the pool history dash I to see it. Also, you want to point people at the validation helpers, so things like what is it, valid prop list or something like that.
Hmm.
They exist,
Yeah,
but the
nah.
result is
See,
not usable because the
yep.
result
See,
has been
I would not.
converted.
I would not. Yeah, I'd be writing down some basic documentation, but I wouldn't be giving people anything too complicated like that to start, because I'd be looking to say, I don't want to show people how to use, you know, this nightmare 200-step process to do things. I want to point out that it's terrible and then start saying, well, what API endpoints do we add to fix this? Because I don't want anyone to have to write. So in some ways, I kind of don't care that the validation functions are already there, and they're not in libzfs, and I don't want anyone using libzfs. That's not what it's for. I'm increasingly convinced of
libzfs
that.
has the validation function. It's
Is it in
required to by the ZFS command to try something and still get error reporting if you do a -n, and you would say, yeah, but the origin does not exist if you try to,
yeah,
or something like that. And maybe you want your command to reuse existing pre-validation.
I think there's a line there. If you are writing a proper, like, I don't know, maybe some of that code gets moved into a library somewhere that's usable, but I think if there's code in the, if you want your command to feel like a real ZFS command, then maybe that needs to be done there, or maybe there needs to be ways to make those tools a bit more extensible in the way that like say something like Git, um, you can write commands that feel like Git commands because it passes certain environment parts through and that sort of thing. So maybe
Can I,
there's some things to be done there. But as a standalone program, I want a library that feels pleasant to use. If there's a whole bunch
so
of error reporting infrastructure that is in libzfs that would be genuinely, or zutil, or in the ZFS tools itself, that would be genuinely useful to lift out, then we should lift it out. However, I don't think most of it structurally is fit for purpose. We could probably copy and paste lots of it, but I don't. It's so hard to use to do anything serious.
so
Jan, what
can
do you
I
have to
take
show?
this?
Yeah, go ahead if
Yeah,
it's
I
off
wanted to
topic.
show the prototype code I have
Okay,
and
sure.
hacking.
If that's cool with everyone else.
Yes, no.
Please, yeah, go ahead. I clicked the wrong button when you first requested, but I didn't know what it's for. So, okay, yeah, let her rip. We're gonna
So
geek
this is
out.
what I'm.
Sorry, everyone else.
So here the function is supposed to take a jail name and an callee, sorry, a caller provided buffer, and will return if it had to change anything or if there's an error code. So okay, it's a bunch of static things which are the same for all jails managed by the tool I'm hacking on. Okay, then this can fail, this can fail, blah, 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 blah. And here's the validation. So here I set up I allocate an NV list. I add the 3 strings to it. So that's a bit annoying to read, I assume. And then I get back an NV list. I call it valid, okay. And the problem is that the NV list, which has been validated, has the numeric values converted from string to numeric and so on. And that's no longer valid for the next function I have to do to actually perform it. So I get back an NV list, which I can't really use for the actual call. I have to use the input to the validation function to actually do it. And then after that, I also make sure that once I've it valid, I just fill out the equivalent history, which is basically the equivalent ZFS command I want to perform. And then I will call the ZFS create function. And after I've done that, I also log the history.
Yeah.
That's about the song and dance routine you have to do. And this here just set the flag somewhere so that the logic calling the commands knows that basically it should think of it like an Ansible module, which wants to know if it has changed something. So this is just is kind of saturating 1-bit counter. Just a flag. Yeah. So yeah, it's a bit annoying to do, but it's C. So what do you expect?
No, I reject that categorically. That's not hard. That's not complicated because it's C. That's complicated because it is a API that is
Not designed to be
not designed
Come on.
not designed not designed to be pleasant to use. Yeah, I think we can do a lot better.
An API only a
Because-
mother could love. I mean, or use or implement. I mean, yeah. Anyway.
Sorry.
No, an API which has like 3 callies, and so nobody bothered to make that interface pretty, because all the ugly things exist on both sides, and why have the extra effort to have this clean interface when there's at least initially moving pieces above and below it.
Yep. Cool.
But
Wow.
that movement has stopped over a decade ago because things
Yeah.
have just stabilized. So there's no need to pretend that it is going to change every week. And so it's no use cleaning up because it's just going to get messed up again. No, this has pretty much stabilized. If you look at the history of libzfs changes, of course, API changes happen, but not that quickly.
But I think it feels a bit circular to me, though. I think that it has gotten complicated enough, and I mean, particularly you look at the zpool and ZFS, the two programs that use it, they have gotten complicated enough that they actually kind of reject change. They're very, very difficult to change without breaking a whole bunch of stuff at distance. So I don't know, but I would also possibly argue that part of the reason they haven't changed for a long time is because no one's got the stomach for it.
But exactly, the problem is that it works right now, but it's not easy to extend. But
I would be
only
more
way-
than I would be happy to I don't think libzfs in some of its design concepts is good as a general purpose library, and that's fine. It was never designed as such because it does signal handling internally. It prints stuff. It can exit your program. It can do all this stuff internally because it's designed as a support facility for two command line
And
programs.
it will abort your program on malloc failure and stuff like this.
Yeah,
Better
exactly.
libraries
Things that
give you the option of here are the malloc and free
exactly
functions.
Mm.
The library
These are
should
things you
accept a function pointer for malloc and free.
So
And
these are
maybe
things you
realloc
don't
if
want
it needs it.
in a library. And so it would probably be, I don't know, but it seems better to me to basically say, look, we're not going to try and turn libzfs into a general purpose library because it's not what it is, and also because those changes are going to be so hard to do while also keeping the command line tools running. Instead, we're going to
Finish.
finish the work of effectively completing libzfs core and gradually migrating things across to it one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. And then there will still be a libzfs. Maybe it'll be called something different, libzfs CLI, or it'll just be compiled in support code like zutil is, or zcommon, or those other utility libraries that also exist. We just don't build a shared object out of them. That like you got to have an approach. You got to have a thing that we can churn on.
I think there are two reasonable approaches possible. One is to either as part of libzfs or as a new library to create the pretty API you would prefer to have seen, ignoring the signal handling and handling of allocation errors. Just pretend that everything is going to work out fine for now and implement the nice API and then have the command line utilities consume that so that you don't break them, but you leave libzfs in its current state and then implement the wrapper kind of inside of it or as a new library and have the ZFS commands deal with less crap, and you kind of refactor the logic from there into the proper API because the command line API makes sense so that you get closer to having a C API which is equivalent to the command line API without just spawning the command for every function call. That's not a serious solution. Or you could argue that, oh no, let's start from first principles and start as kind of the libzfs core, but a little bit lower end where, okay, it's just a library to help you fill out the structs, send system calls, so ioctl and open and close basically, and decode the values, but no iterators, no nothing, just the way to interface with the device. And then maybe once that is done, implement the next level up. But yeah, here the problem would become libnvpair, which is not written in such a way that it's easy to use unless you assume that memory allocations are always successful. Because I haven't found a way in libnvpair to give it pre-allocated stuff for everything. I mean, the init function does take a pre-allocated struct and initialize it, but then you have things like taking a string in and so on, or formatting things out again, and then yeah.
Yeah, so there's a few different things there. I guess where I'm at is we already have the command line tools. We already have a libzfs to support them. I don't care about this as a project for their sake. Like, yes, I would like that code to be tidier, but I would like all the code in ZFS to be tidier, and I tidy things all the time, and other people do as well. What I want is to have, like, maybe easy is the wrong word, but at least like sensible ways for new programs to be written, new integrations to be done. The things we haven't thought of yet. How many people have turned up over the years thinking, oh, I've got a great thing that I'd like to plug ZFS into. Have had a look around, haven't found an API that makes any sense to them, haven't found any good examples, and walked away. We never heard from them. I have no idea. Well, I bet those people exist.
I can guarantee you they exist because some of them are in this channel.
Yeah, right. Yep. So I want something for them. That's the point of this work for me. Now, would it be great if the ZFS tools could be moved over to that thing progressively? Yes, absolutely. Is that thing libzfs core? Maybe it is. I don't know. it's certainly not in its current form, but maybe it is with some documentation, that sort of thing. I think that's largely the conclusion that I've reached. I have plenty of ideas. But I haven't done that work yet, and I don't have the time yet to do it. But yeah, I consider libzfs as it currently is like an evolutionary dead end, even if it is the thing we have. Like, I do not want to see it used in any new programs. It is too hard. It doesn't do what people want.
Interesting.
It doesn't make like it was never designed for that, and it shows. I feel a lot more confident saying it was never designed for that, having seen those old talk notes that say it was never designed for that. But it's too hard to get things that should be easy to do things that should be easy. Like I don't think it's.
I think part of the reason that that it keeps getting brought up to design something that's a reasonable, stable interface and then redo the base tools in it is because now if the base tools are in it, it means that we know it won't get left behind.
Yeah.
And it tidies them up so that it opens them up again to new feature contributions. It lowers the pain threshold to improve the commands.
Yeah,
for example, what I would like to see for ZFS, which brought me into this whole mess, is I wanted a way to have a kind of declarative config file specifying how I would like a part of my pools to look like, and then tell me if it's already in sync with reality or which changes are needed, and then potentially execute them, preferably really in such a way that it is as close to atomic as possible, and if possibly, with no observable intermediate states, or in a way where you at least can always make progress and idempotently continue your transformations. So that I can say, I want my jail to have this data set, this to be a clone of that, and so on. And I just specify that, run this command, and it will either tell me everything is in sync, or I would have to change this, or I changed this, depending on the flags.
Yeah.
And this kind of for jail automation in FreeBSD.
Yeah. And so exactly. And I agree with I agree with that. I would like those internal tools to be to use some the new thing, whatever the new thing may be, whenever the new thing may be. I do agree with that, but I don't think that there is a way to. I mean, maybe it's just a difference in how you sort of think about drawing the lines. I don't see a way to slowly turn libzfs as it's currently put together into something that's small and light and nice. And by that I mean I don't see a way to keep its current API. Sorry, does that go?
I'm curious, do you also sense that there's risk in tinkering with some of these, the command line tooling and the libzfs in that regards? Like, are we afraid that we're going to break existing functionality?
Yes,
I am. It doesn't mean I won't do it, but it is high risk. It's very difficult to follow and understand the code, and it's very difficult to know how a change can impact something at something quite far away that seems unrelated. In fact, there may very well be 2.3.1 was released a few days ago, and there may very well be a 2.3.2 in the next couple of days, because there is a a struct change got in that has broken a couple of things. It doesn't matter; it's very small, but yeah, for exactly this kind of reason, because it's so hard to actually see what's happening far away. I think, and like, I don't think any of this is insurmountable. I think we can do it, but if we're going to make the effort to actually fix things, let's make it understandable. Let's fix it towards something that's nice. I don't want to start a multi-year, slow transition,
So
because it won't get finished. We already have 2 or 3 of those.
what I worry about with starting with basically writing the libzfs core as the helper to perform VR octets is that even if you get it perfect, at the end you have effectively nothing to show for it because it's only useful as a building block for the next layer on top of it.
Mm.
It may be perfectly designed and a great building block, but it doesn't provide anything without a consumer using that. So you don't have something to show to anyone but a fellow engineer working on familiar with the code base what you've accomplished, why it's useful. So I'm afraid that this is a perfect kind of trap for oneself to burn out on because you've designed something, but you have nothing to validate your results with because there's no consumer for it. And in the end, yeah.
Okay, I think I'm a bit confused now.
Until the consumer is written, it's kind of.
So I think I'm a bit confused
there.
now. What do we think we're building? Because I'm not
Exactly, that's the question. So what I'm working first. So to me, the idea behind what is there in libzfs is that it's mostly in libzfs core, it's mostly code to interface with the ZFS character device.
Yep. That is its express purpose.
Exactly. And if you do that, there are a bunch of things which are missing, where that functionality is still trapped in the full libzfs. For example, appending to the pool history is not in libzfs core, and the struct you have to populate, so the MV pair with the message string in it.
And yes, there are things missing.
Types to implement that are not exposed by eval libraries headers. You have to find that in some third location and so on. The way to deal with that in a properly designed libzfs core would be so that you have the API to fill all the fields in the struct command and parse the results, turn it into libnv pairs, and that's the end of it. Like, it should allow you to set up the libnv pair types, send them to the character device, and get the resulting NV pair spec, and that's more or less it for the core. And then you need a library on top of that, which is suitable for general use by someone who wants to interface from C with ZFS. Some kind of backup or replication software, some kind of
something that's nice. Yes, something that's nice to use. The IOCTLs are not nice to use. They may or may not be well designed or necessary, but they, at the very least, are not nice to use. So yes, I agree with that. There needs to be an upper layer for.
Yep. That upper layer should, in my opinion, at least that upper layer shouldn't be part of the core library. It should be its own thing, and the place to put it right now would be libzfs.
Right, I see what you're saying. No, that I disagree with. I think libzfs needs to be put out to pasture because we may use code from it, but that it as an interface, it's
So
not good. I don't want to put it in the same pile of code because I don't want you to have to, as a user, I don't want you to have to think about how those pieces interact. Like
exactly.
that, like does a user of something called libzfs still have to worry about libzfs handle T versus ZFS handle T? Do they still have to do the like the dataset recursion for building a list of data sets? Do they still have to worry about the kernel coming back to them and saying I'm out of memory? And they have to grow the buffer. Do they have to do that stuff? Do they have to think about how the new API interacts with the old one? It's like that's
So
just
call it
unfair.
libzfs2 or something. But
Yeah,
that
yeah.
higher level API, in my opinion, should closely mirror the existing CLI functionality. So I want to have
Right.
something like a struct ZFS create request, which I can then add a bunch of properties to. And
Nah, you don't want that. You want pull.create. But yeah, that's it. But yes, there should be something in
pull.create,
between.
yeah, okay, but
I know.
I need,
But when
you have to have some kind of factory pattern like stuff to build up your complex request. Because you have a request to create a data set with a bunch of
Well,
properties,
yeah, no.
and the
These
request
things,
should be a
these
different type from a response and so on, so that you have a bit of
yes.
help from the type system.
And
And
but these things I think are specific to the language. I think the low-level functionality needs to be something that can be comfortably bound into any particular kind of language. And I mean, there's
but
plenty of
if you,
examples of this done
Let
well.
him finish.
But see, if I'm writing something like that in say a Python, then my args are going to be my complicated args for create are probably just going to be a dictionary. But if
of
I'm
course,
doing it in Java, I'm probably using a builder object, which I then freeze and then submit. So I'm going to be creating an object, adding attributes to it, and then submitting that as part of my create call. Underneath and I'm not saying they're going to result. I'm not saying that those things should be using ioctals directly or a library that provides shims over the ioctals, but those things are going to still map to the same kind of concepts. Ultimately, they're going to call a create or a whatever. So that API, I would want to be fairly simple C. Like the nice C version might use, we talked about it last week, I think, might use like say varargs or some cool macros to help you, build it up easily. But I wouldn't use that for the basic C library that I want to be bound to other languages because, that's harder to do that way. But yes, I agree there are going to be upper layers. But what I'm saying is I don't think that is libzfs as currently constituted because I think it has too many ideas about being used as part of a CLI program that really cannot be disentangled.
exactly, especially the assumption, which is totally valid for a shoplift CLI command, that if I can't allocate a resource, it's okay to kill the process. Because that little ZFS creator, okay, it ran out of memory, you're shit out of luck. And it's not that much worse to just kill the ZFS command process because there's nothing reasonable this command could do now. But if you're the daemon responsible for snapshot management and someone accidentally ran a few make jobs too much in parallel, you don't want backups to stop for good.
Yep.
Yeah, or if you got for some reason, I don't know, an unreasonably large abusive data set, I don't know, maybe someone thought it's funny to have 10 million 1 kilobyte user properties on a data set. And you ran in some kind of container environment with tight memory limits. You try to get all the properties and you were just run out of allowed address space or something.
Mm.
These are corner cases, but if the library is too opinionated on them, in some corner cases, there is no proper way out anymore. A really
Yes.
bad example would be when someone in the Linux world eventually thinks of it as this libzfs call belongs in the system init process because we already have libdbus in there. So why should we have libzfs in it? And then you run out of a resource and suddenly you're aborting the init process because some genius decided that,
Yeah.
if we have libinotify in there and libdbus, why not libzfs or whatever?
Yep. Yeah.
Of course,
And
that's
that's why. Just
yeah.
libzfs should never have been made a shared object like that. It should never have been packaged as libzfs 6 on Linux. Anyway.
Brent, you
Yeah.
mentioned naming. Should this be something very different like ZFS API or just some industry standard that would make perfect sense to people and we just gently, bring them into new conventions as needed? I don't know. Brainstorming here.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, names are a good source of bike shedding. I have no idea.
Yeah, I
will
don't
let-
care what color we paint the bike shed.
Exactly.
I will let the person who starts this project name it. There you go.
Red like the flames coming out of it.
Bingo.
Yeah. I think
well,
I did. I think I did suggest a name towards the end of my
goodness.
blog post. So we will see if you've read that far. I didn't really suggest a name. I wrote a name and then told people not to bike shed it. But anyway.
Well, Vest. Oh goodness. Oh, I like it. But okay, out of here.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I trust you have adequate food for thought and let's
Oh,
not
plenty. And I've got to go
scope
back
of
to my real work for a little while now.
Yeah, and very much this is an exercise in determining where we're at, what we want, and then proposing a larger project as appropriate. I know there are funds out there, but asking for something that we're going to live with for a very long time is pretty darn important. So let's get this right.
And I still think they're getting ZFS core documented and usable for what it is our step zero. I think it has to be.
Brilliant.
Because otherwise we don't know what we don't know.
Bingo. Exactly. Yes, Jan.
One of the features, given the state where libzfs was written in and libzfs core was started when it was an Illumos OS or back then Solaris implementation detail, would be to make sure the headers do not pollute the namespace, do not depend on exposing the Solaris auditability layers.
Yes,
so that
and we've
library
talked
is
about
a
that. That's in my step zero. Make it work.
Whatever operating system ZFS may be ported in a decade, so that it doesn't depend on, I don't know, having just the headers. The implementation is its own thing, but the exported API is the interface where it should play nice, even if the guts are a bit confused about which operating system compiled for.
Agreed.
Okay.
The consumer should not have to inherit that confusion.
So let's let you both sleep on that one and welcome Alexander. Does anyone else including Alexander, have ideas, topics, questions, concerns? Do check out the doc. There is that lovely blog post that Rob produced and various other news. Thank you, Andrew, for other article links about certain movies and Blender. That's close to my heart, need not be close to your heart. Anyway, Alexander, have anything for today? You've just rolled in. You must have done that for a reason. And I'm surprised that
No,
MS.com
sorry,
is all around. Ah, yes, please.
nothing for me today. I'm just homesick, and I checked and saw. I was like, oh, the ZFS call.
Oh, those guys, yeah. Cool. So yeah. Cool. Well, let's maybe call it good there. Thank you for everyone who's shown any interest in helping out with the 2025 OpenZFS User and Developer Summit for October. Exact date's not yet announced, but we're getting there. We're getting there. I say we call it good unless you've got something else. And correct, I can't thank you enough. You can't shut me up, even if you try. Thank you, everybody. Have a great one. Rob, do you want the honors?
Oh, sure. Slam those like and subscribe buttons. There you
Thank
go.
you, Rob. You rock. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, thanks.